Here we go with another edition of Bull in the Basement. And as always, well, as your host, and because of the name of the show, I'm in my basement. Well, my guest on this episode, Andrew Kulyk, is in a much nicer place down in North Carolina, right there on a golf course. Alligators awaiting to pounce on prey. Andrew, good to see you again, man. How are you?
Rich, it is awesome to be talking to you again, and thank you. Yeah, a short vacation down here. It's been busy up north, so having a good time so far. We just landed here.
There's a lot to talk to you about, and we're going to do sort of a two-parter here in one. One of it is your Ukrainian heritage and background, and the fact that you have family there or did recently. Obviously, the conflict going on. I want to talk to you a lot about that and how people can help with efforts there. And then, of course, I want to be, Andrew, and it's probably too late for this, but I want to be your third musketeer, man, when it comes to the ultimate sports road tripping that you and your sports partner, Pete Farrell, have done over the years. Now, for folks that don't know, so next to my wife, my family, and my pets, in the next, well, I'll throw God in there too. It's probably pretty important I do that if I'm religious at all, right? So besides all of that, next in line of things I love, sports and travel. And you guys have done a lot of it. And I want to ask you about that as well. So let me get to the sports part secondly, because I think, on the world stage, what's happening in Ukraine is an abomination, obviously, and everyone, I mean, regardless of their background, is worldwide, their hearts are bleeding for the folks in Ukraine. You've been there many times. You have family there. I mean, talk about what you're feeling with what's happening right now.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for putting a spotlight on that situation. And actually, our sports road trip and the Ukraine topic do kind of overlap, and I'll be happy to explain. I'm a first-generation American, born in Buffalo, and both my parents were immigrants, and my dad was Ukrainian. And as a matter of fact, legendary stories of his youth fight as a freedom fighter, fighting the Soviets and the Bolsheviks and trying to rid his land of Stalin. And then, of course, post-war, he ended up as a refugee and came to America and was unable to return. So that was my growing up experience with the Ukrainian church and Ukrainian grammar school and the language and our community here in Buffalo. And we have probably over 20,000 Ukrainian Americans in Erie County alone. So it is a substantial community of people. I do keep in touch. I have 4 first cousins, and of course they have children and some distant cousins. And I can trace my roots all the way to a small village about 40 miles east of Lviv. And now everyone watching the news, we've all gotten a geography lesson of what cities are where. Right in the western end of Ukraine. And I've had the fortune of going on 3 trips there lifetime. One is on a student exchange as a youngster, but we've done 2 trips there in recent years, in 2016 and 2018. My sports partner, Peter Farrell, went with me. We actually made it out to be a sports road trip, and they got to visit and meet my family as well. It's a beautiful country, very warm. I think Eastern Europeans in general, I mean, you go to any house and immediately there's a table covered with food and vodka and, and sociability. And the biggest thing I gathered coming from that experience is what I call the Ukrainian fighting spirit. These people desperately want freedom. They want to have the things that we here have in the West. They want to build a society that is, good for children and just aspirational goals that we all have as human beings. And one of the things that's pretty universal there is nobody wants to go back to the old Soviet life. And there are stories in almost every family there of horror and genocide. And everyone can talk about a relative or an uncle or a family member that disappeared in the middle of the night, that was executed in front of them, that was sent to the gulags. And this goes to the Stalin years and the Great Hunger when Russia tried to starve the Ukrainian nation. And it goes back to the Tsarist years and the 1800s and Taras Shevchenko and when Ukraine was declared Little Russia. And it goes to the Cossacks in the 1700s fighting Muscovy. And there just seems to be dynamic that goes hundreds of years of Russia just trying to overrun and subjugate Ukrainians. And it's sad because these two cultures are just yin and yangs together. The languages are almost overlapping. The food, the music, everything is like almost the same. And Ukrainians would love to live side by side in freedom with their Slavic brothers, but it just hasn't happened. And this time, Rich, people have said enough. We're not going to do it again. And now with the power of social media and communications and instant everything, and it's a different world. And these people are fighting back. And I really believe they will die before going back to a Soviet style regime and being, subjugated by others. And that's why you're seeing that spirit that you're seeing now. And no matter what it takes, I really believe Ukraine will prevail.
It's really remarkable, the fight and resolve of the Ukrainian people through this conflict. Have you heard from your cousins?
I have. And again, the power of communications. It's funny because we've seen how horrible the roads are over there, and they have just infrastructure is still a work in progress. But one thing Ukrainians, a lot of Eastern Europe, they all have state-of-the-art devices and communications. Everyone's got satellite dishes on their roof. I was a little astounded in a good way about that. So we do speak regularly on Skype or Facebook Messenger. And my immediate family, they're doing okay. They are in an area of the country east of Lviv, which is out of the war zone. The first night there were air raid sirens going there. And in fact, my prime contact is actually my second cousin. His name is Vasil, and he's 33 years old, married, has a daughter. And they were jarred at midnight and all had to leave their apartment buildings. The city's named Ternopil, which is 40 miles east of Lviv. And they were basically herded into a square in a park and just had to wait for an all clear. His daughter caught a cold that night and they were sent home. So they have not had the deprivations except finding gasoline is tough. Food on the supermarkets is sketchy, so they stock up when they can. The biggest change is that they are welcoming and dealing with refugees from east, from Kyiv, from near the Black Sea, people who are fleeing the bombing. Yeah, and heading towards either to stay there for relative safety, although that area could become a war zone tomorrow, or going onward to the Polish or Hungarian borders, where they're very close to, about 60 miles east. And over there are, every high school gymnasium floor, public building, theaters, opera houses, it's all cots and portable toilets and hastily crafted kitchens, all trying to service the tens of thousands of people who have fled. So that's the human story there of what's going on in their neighborhood.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I say it all the time for people in this country that complain about, we don't have this and we don't have that. Just think about them and think about the situation that they're living through as we speak. It is absolutely tragic. And, the other thing you mentioned geography of Ukraine. You're right, 100%. I never knew that some of these cities, whether it's Kiev or Lviv, either one of they're huge cities. These cities are Chicago, right? These are massive cities. Some of them.
Yeah, Kyiv is, you could compare it to Chicago. 4 million people. It has got a skyline and skyscrapers. When we were there in 2016, Peter and I remarked it looked like Toronto.
Yeah.
Buildings that were lit up at night, and in the midst of this, there's they have a church on every corner, like we have a Tim Hortons in Buffalo. With the onion towers and magnificent architecture and churches everywhere. And they have a subway line, a metro line that's a little better than Buffalo's Metro Rail. We'll get there hopefully someday.
That's not hard to do, by the way.
And it's a hustle and bustle. Lviv, population about 750,000. Mm-hmm. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Again, the architecture and the buildings are just splendid, and lots of history because that land shifted from the Austria-Hungary Empire to Russia, to Poland, to occupy Germany during the Nazi years, to a free Ukraine. It's always kind of been the bulwark of Ukrainian independence. So you have a mishmash of cultures, a huge Jewish community that just makes it a fascinating city to visit. And their coffee shops, their restaurants and everything are like second to none in a democratic country. It wasn't like that in Soviet days. The food kind of sucked. I remember my first trip there when I was in college. But it's a magnificent city to visit. And again, just, great people, warm people everywhere. And, I was kind of a conquering hero arriving when I got there. I still remember I was wearing my Sabres jacket, okay? And Pete's wearing a Bills jersey. And this old gentleman walks up to me and he says, "Where are you from?" And this is in Lviv. I says, "I'm a tourist from America and we're visiting. My father was a lived here from Berezhana, and he fought in UPA, the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. And the guy welled up in tears and kissed me on each cheek and said, "Glory to Ukraine." And that's the kind of emotion you get. And Pete only knew a few words of Ukrainian. He's learned some since. He said, like, what just happened here? And it's the kind of thing that I was made to feel welcome, like I was one of theirs almost immediately.
Yeah, Andrew Kulyk famously has written for Artvoice for years. One of the most famous and popular reads in Buffalo on newsstands and now digital. A lot of his work in terms of being, a journalist, it can be found on muckrack.com as well. So you not only talk about, things happening around Buffalo, but you, of course, are a huge sports fan. I want to get to your road trip and all of that in a moment, but I still want to talk a little bit more about Ukraine. And now I'll sort of segue to the sports part of it. And the fact that, regular everyday people are taking up arms in Ukraine, women and children leave, men stay here, right? There is the call for, what was it, 18 to 60, whatever year-old men, stay back. We're going to get you some arms and you're going to fight. And they do. And they did. To the death, apparently. I mean, there are Americans we've seen that have gone over that are of Ukrainian descent that have gone to the Ukraine to take up arms to defend their native home country. It's remarkable. But guys like the Klitschko brothers, here's where the sports come in, right? The Klitschko brothers are involved. Alexei Zhitnik, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if he is still, but I know he was he the owner of one of the soccer / football teams in Lviv or Kyiv, I think one of those. He's obviously there and involved as well. So yes, sports, in terms of Americans that know any, I'll put it in air quotes, famous Ukrainian athletes, it is transcending across both lines, and you're seeing the fight. I mean, these are the Klitschko brothers, two of the greatest boxers ever. Now they have a whole different kind of fight that they've taken up, and like the boxing game where you fight to the final bell, I feel like they're in it until the final bell, whenever that is. It's really remarkable, the sporting angle of it.
What mostly strikes me about them, and Alexei Zhitnik, I believe, is outside Kyiv somewhere.
Okay.
I think it was a hockey program, but I haven't really kept up with his.
That's probably right.
But these are people, I mean, Zhitnik, being a hockey player, amassed a fortune. It might have been smaller than what salaries are today, but it's still, to make his life very comfortable. And obviously the Klitschko brothers, same thing. These people have the means to leave, take their families somewhere to relative safety and be very comfortable, and then send contributions back. And they elect to stay and fight. And I mean, that makes them badasses. And I mean, the courage that courses through their veins is something I don't know if I would have it within me. I mean, if confronted with that horrible decision, do you stay, do you fight? I guess we'd find out quickly what's in our own souls and our own capabilities. But that summoning that kind of courage and staying there, I think, is what's giving a lot of their compatriots resolve, because it's like I say, it's very easy to go away and then send boxes of blankets with their money.
Yeah.
So absolutely remarkable.
To that point, I know you mentioned the 20,000 Ukrainians here in Western New York, and they are strong, and they get together and they hang out and they party. I know they party. I've heard some pretty good Ukrainian party stories from over the years at the Ukrainian Center. I've never been able to witness or take one in, but I hear the Ukrainians like to have a ball and they're fun-loving folks. But I know there's people here that want to support the folks in Ukraine, whether it's monetarily, whether it's via supplies, whether it's medical supplies or diapers or clothing or whatever, blankets, whatever the case may be, food, if we can get it there. And I know that there's a way that people might be able to do that here in Western New York.
Sure. I think the best place to act, if you have physical donations, and they are open literally every day there, and they've got their kitchen open if you want to pick up some vareniki, which commonly known as pierogies, but all good stuff, and that's the Holy Trinity Ukrainian Orthodox Church. They're at 225 Como Park Boulevard in Cheektowaga, just east of Union Road. Kind of right across the street from the church entrance is the Apple Tree Business Park, so it's right there. And they are collecting contributions. I think the organization they're doing is ending up with medical supplies and medical relief to doctors right on the front. It's a vetted charity that doesn't involve administrative. You donate to charities, and sometimes there's some CEO making $8 million, and then God knows where the rest of the money goes. And such is not the case. So Ukrainians are very miserly and frugal. So when they put $1 down for anything, they want to know that it's going to its intended use. So I would probably suggest that would probably be the best place to go to. I wish I had an online source to say, or click here, because that's how we do things easily. The Dnipro, and that can be found on Facebook, DNIPRO, Ukrainian Cultural Center. And they have an active Facebook presence, and they are also acting as a vessel to organize support and relief. And they have a beautiful cultural center on Genesee Street. My dad was actually a founding member when he arrived here in 51. That club opened in 1955. He's got his name on a plaque there somewhere. And he and my mom, that's where their wedding was. And so I have a lot of DNA into that building as well, in that club.
No question about it. So those are a couple of different ways you can help out if you're looking for ways to do it. Okay, so I'm glad we could talk about that right out of the gate, because it's so important, and it's the first thing you're seeing on the news pretty much every night, and it's horrific, and there's no reason for it. And let's just hope for the best that it ends how we all hope it does, and doesn't continue to escalate any more than it already has. So let's segue to now a little bit more upbeat, fun, topical thing that people see a lot of times on my podcast and episodes, and that's sports, and that's you and Pete and the Ultimate Sports Road Trip. So, okay, 550 venues you've been to, correct?
Thereabouts. I don't have the exact count, but it's over 550 now, lifetime, and that's different venue experiences. So whether it be Madison Square Garden for a Rangers game, or a junior rink in Saskatchewan, or the soccer stadium in Kyiv, that's 550 separate venue experiences worldwide.
Wow. Is that
started in 1998?
Is there a record? Do you have the record? Do you know if there is one?
There are different metrics. I mean, now, and thanks again to the power of social media, we have met and befriended a community of like-minded people who love sports travel. For one thing, we have a group called Club 124. We're the inaugural members, to the best of our knowledge. And to be in Club 124, you have to have attended a home game of every team in the NHL, NBA, NFL, and MLB. That's 124 franchises. We have 13 active members who have completed that feat, and several more who are chasing, and then a whole group of sycophants and admirers who kind of hang out with us and say, we'd love to do what you do. And we all meet once a year. We all met to go see the Islanders together in UBS Arena in late January. Sadly, they had 5 inches of snow, so Kathy Hochul declared an apocalypse and closed down the city.
Oh, no.
So the game never happened, so we just drank. And everybody went back separately. Pete and I went 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
So that's a good story. But additionally, there are people who would count. We have a couple named Gary and the King, Gary and Mike from New York. They go to about 300 sporting events a year. I can't do that. I mean, being in New York City, they've got access to a number of sports franchises, then minor league and colleges.
Yep.
But I have a life outside of that, and they're kind of crazy. I think Mike went to like 400 events. I mean, think about that. You've got to go to double headers. You've got to go see Bridgeport at 1 o'clock, and then the Knicks at 7 o'clock, and then you're at it the next day. And so they're kind of crazy in a remarkable way. But the core thing is the 124 teams, and that's how we count. And we also, if a team changes venues or moves cities, we have to go back. For example, the Islanders, they played at Nassau and then at the horrid Barclays Center.
Yeah.
And once they opened up UBS Arena, that went on the to-do list. The next one coming up, which came right out of left field, is the Arizona Coyotes. They left Glendale, and they're going to their air quotes temporary venue for the next 3 seasons, which is really an enhanced college venue. But I guess we're going to Arizona next winter. So, because we have to say, in our current and active venues, we have seen each team play. So those are our rules, and we have hit the finish line as of a couple of weeks ago.
I have you can't see them, but there's the wall to my right. There are 4 framed scratch off things, and in every one of them is the football stadiums, the ballparks, the NBA arenas, and the hockey arenas. And obviously the hockey and the NBA, a lot of them share. Some share baseball and football, not many. But before I did this, I counted. I'm only at 40 total of 124. Now, I think a lot of people say, wow, that's a good number.
That is a good number.
And
more than many.
I don't anticipate getting much higher than that anytime soon, but it is really cool to do. And I had the good fortune of working with Bills Radio back in the day. And so, my travel was taken care of for a lot of the NFL stadiums, but there's been so many new ones since I left that I haven't gotten to that I look forward to. And of course, the Bills will have one within the next 3 to 5 years, we hope. So let me ask you this: what for you? And obviously, you mentioned this isn't just all of the 550-ish that you've done. It's not all pro. There's college now. High school gymnasiums don't count, right? It's got to be pro, college, juniors in that realm.
The rest of the list will comprise the following. In minor league hockey, organized pro hockey, AHL, ECHL, that type of thing. The junior circuits, obviously there's 3 junior leagues in Canada, WHL, the Q, and the OHL. And they offer really superb venue experiences. I mean, the new arenas in Ontario, go now that the border is opening again. Just over to St. Catharines. Meridian Center is just a great place to see a game. And they used to play in a glorified, hockey barn, and now they're in a beautiful venue. Moving on, the NCAA would be college football. We've been to, I think, 55 of the Division I.
Wow.
So we're about halfway there. The college venues. So Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Wisconsin, Penn State. We've been to a lot of these places. College basketball, not only going to some of the major college basketball venues, such as UCLA and whatnot, but we've done a sub-regional every year. And when we say sub-regional, we don't okay, they're going to be in Pittsburgh, sure, but we go to places like Tulsa and Boise and Birmingham to go experience an arena where we normally wouldn't go because they don't have a pro sports team. So we've checked off a lot of them. We're kind of running out of places to go because the NCAA is a rotation. We were going to go to Greensboro in 2020, but of course the pandemic canceled that. So there's that aspect of it. Minor league baseball, AAA, AA, single A. Now they've shrunken the number of teams, but there's still, I think, of the 120 that are now the official list, because 30 teams times 4 venues. I think we've been to 84 of the 120. So we have a little bit of work to do on that. Then there's the MLS. So that's pro soccer.
Right.
And we've really embraced soccer, Rich. We've been to Europe 7 times since
awesome.
all in the last 12 years.
Yeah.
We went to see the Bills play in London.
Yeah.
We went to, so Wembley, that's a venue experience. But we've really embraced soccer because if you think it's like watching paint dry, and the first time casual viewer could say, when are they going to get shots? When are they going to get offense? You've got to go to a game in the Premier League or to Germany in the Bundesliga and see Dortmund play with 80,000 and the whole wall of supporters. And then you get it. And you're out there, and the energy and the fan spirit and the music and the chanting and the all the clubs and the banners is just so over the top. You just don't want it to end. So now we have been across the Bundesliga and a number, I think, 10 Premier League teams, and just absolutely love it. Of course, the pandemic slowed us down. We went to Euro 2016 in France. We had all set itinerary for Euro 2020, all got wiped out. And 2024 is being hosted in Germany, where I have family from my mom's side. Perfect. So that is on the list. So that kind of gives you a flavor of what we get to 550. And one of those, I have to say, is Olimpijski Stadium in downtown Kyiv. Mm-hmm. And we saw the Dynamo Kyiv of the Ukrainian Premier League play.
That's awesome.
And that was also a memorable experience.
I had the great opportunity, and we didn't go, and I was really bummed out. But the town that Rasmus Dahlin is from in Sweden, we were there a couple of summers ago or springs ago, and had a chance to go to the team that he played for before he was a Sabre, and sadly never went. And I'm still bummed out about it. We were right across the street from the arena and never went to the game. But those situations arise all the time in a lot of my travels. My wife is weird with my fascination. Obviously, you clearly have one. It's almost an obsession for you, or an addiction. But I am when I see, if I'm driving, I don't care where it is, and I see lights, a stadium, a field, an arena. Yeah, I want to know what that is. 100%. 100%. I'm driving through Williamsport down 15 to go to my brother's in Maryland, and I have to stop at the Little League stadiums where the Little League World Series are. I have to take pictures. This is where it all, this blah, 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 blah. And my wife is like, you're crazy. You're crazy. But it is, but it's, it's one of those things when you grow up a huge sports fan and you have a chance to see some of these iconic buildings, and obviously sports being played in them is really cool. So for you, okay, does auto racing count? So have you been to Daytona? Does golf count? Have you been to Augusta? Does tennis count? Have you been to Flushing, etc.? Things like that.
It would if we'd done that. We've wanted to go to NASCAR. Pete grew up in Horsehead, so he used to go to was it Glens Falls?
Watkins Glen,
Watkins Glen.
Yep.
So he was actually volunteered there when he was a teenager, but we have never officially been together. If we went to a U.S. Tennis Pro or whatever, yes, that would count. It's a stadium, but I've never been. We did attend the U.S. Open in Rochester.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, we'd love to go to Augusta, and that would count, obviously. But right now, that 550 is all comprised within the 5 sports, our 4 North American sports and soccer. So
Got it. Okay. All right. What do you prefer? I mean, obviously you've been to every single style, every single size. Do you prefer the new ultra modern ones or the classical ones or something in between?
That's a great question, because when we started this, and I'm going to go to 1998. That's when Peter and I had just met. It was an online sports forum, and our stop number 1 was actually a Sabres game in 1998. And he came to our, we were season ticket holders then, and hung out, and a new friendship was forged. When we first started this and kind of cooked this all up, we were all about the new venues. And I mean, obviously Buffalo just opened up a new hockey arena. We're off to Columbus, and it's, wow, they have these ribbon boards, and they have this atrium with a cascading waterfall, and they have and all these bells and whistles, and man, we should have this, we should have that. And then after a while, because major sports was in a building spree that was kind of incredible during that whole time. It's still there, but not like it used to be. Everyone was building a new stadium and a new arena, and one was better than the next. And then we started saying, these are starting to become a blur. Everybody has got, carpeted club concourses and, signature amenities and that type of thing. And then we started waxing about, oh, they're closing the Igloo. I mean, no, let's go in there and just smell the spilt beer and walk up these funky concourses and look at the leaky pipes. And that also was just an amazing building, and it's gone now. And then it, now it's at the point that, yeah, some of these places are disappearing and have disappeared off the landscape. Some you don't miss. The Oakland A's, god awful. The Raiders, that Alameda, it's at 80 million Oco Stadium, whatever they call it now.
I've been, I would agree 100%. That was one of the most awful. That, and believe it or not, and I know the history there, and this is probably sacrilegious of me to say, but Candlestick Park to me was also horrendous. So the 2 Bay Area, we'll call them old school stadiums, and the one in Oakland that they're still using, even the one in Qualcomm, was brutal. Just big giant concrete slabs with some seats in them, basically, is what I remember. But yeah, continue your stories about them.
Yeah, but I mean, again, you have to look at the era in the 70s, and it almost happened in Buffalo here. It was all about the mixed use baseball football combo stadium. And at the end, when it talked about fan comfort, sight lines, amenities, even usability by the teams, they didn't work well for either. And so it took a while to get it right. And now, of course, the Raiders are gone, so it's a baseball only. So that was really the last one. And and just a little history lesson, because I was a little kid, but back in the late 60s, there was a plan to build a dome in Lancaster that would be home for the Bills and home for the MLB expansion team that eventually went to Montreal and San Diego. We were that close even then to getting a baseball team here. And that would have been a mixed use stadium. And imagine if that had all happened, what the discussions would be now about a replacement venue, because it probably would not have lasted this long even.
I feel like you should be consulted by PSE and by the county and the state government on what the new stadium should look like, considering the, your history and experience of seeing as many as you have.
Yeah, it's funny because we've actually talked about doing that, just putting a card in a business model and saying that if you have, any kind of design concept need or whatever, and what works and what doesn't work, call us type of thing. And, and we've broached conversations with people at our local teams that have either been met with, yeah, that sounds great, or like an eye roll. Uh, but and it's funny, I'm trying to remember the exact same thing where I'd actually put together a design concept and sent it to one of the former executives at the Buffalo Sabres. This is the Adelphia years. And he was very receptive and said, gee, that sounds great, guys. And then they ended up doing this. And I think it was something to do with a point of sale thing at the concession stands, that they probably paid a consultant $50,000 to come up with the idea.
Right.
And it's like, sometimes just talk to your fans and we'll come up that. I mean, we talked with the Buffalo Bisons about bullpens. I mean, until the Blue Jays came in, these guys used to, toss the ball around in the dirt on the outfield track. And it was, one of the things that we really, the eye roll came when the expansion committee came in the 90s to give Buffalo a team. Like, that's the bullpen. They've remodeled it since, but we saw a cool concept at a minor league ballpark where the bullpens were actually amongst the seats. And we sent pictures and called Booch and Brad Bisbing and said, take a look at this. This would be amazing. And so it would be nice if they listened, but we continue the relationship with our teams. We love them. They love us back. And sometimes, the good ideas are just waiting out there.
So for you, Andrew, and Pete, do you I think probably a lot of people want to know, you have to obviously do this on some sort of budget, because, and I get it, this is spanned 25 years. I understand, but still 25 years, 550 venues, that's a lot of events and a lot of travel. So you must have a pretty nice spreadsheet to figure out where you're going, when, where you're staying, what kind of seats you're buying and where, right?
Yeah, there is. First of all, it's creative planning with travel. So when we were really in the throes of all this, you do a week and you try to get as many teams in as possible. So it wouldn't be just flying to Atlanta to see a game.
Right.
We back in 1999, I remember we did a Thursday night game, I believe, this is NFL, in Jacksonville, drove up to Atlanta, saw the Atlanta Thrashers, who are now the Winnipeg Jets, on a Friday, the Atlanta Hawks on a Saturday, the Atlanta Falcons on a Sunday, and then back down to Tampa for the Bucks for Monday night football. So that was 5 games in 5 nights.
Right.
And
there you go.
Creative scheduling, so you're taking one plane trip, renting a car. And, and by the time we're done of that 124, we got 5 teams knocked off and completed. Whirlwind trip, kind of crazy, but it works. So every trip, we try to plan that. Interestingly, our most recent trip was the Seattle Kraken in the NHL. And there was really nothing nearby. There are a couple of WHL teams we were thinking, but a couple cross-border and all the COVID stuff. It's kind of, as of April 1st, thankfully, we can just do all their silly app thing and just go. But we couldn't go over to Canada. So we just flew out to see the Kraken, just the one game. But Peter and I have touched 49 states and Puerto Rico.
Wow.
And seen games in 47 of those states and Puerto Rico. So heck, if we're in Seattle, on to Alaska we go.
Right on.
So we took the 3-hour flight to Anchorage and spent 4 days up there and did a lot of muckluck sightseeing and caught a college hockey game in Fairbanks to add another team to the list. And so now we got all 50 states done as well.
That is phenomenal.
Yep. So the budgeting part of it, yeah. I mean, we've become experts at the cheap flights, the consolidator hotel sites. Now, of course, back in the late 90s, you had to write to a team or call to find out when are the Steelers putting their 200 tickets on sale.
Yep.
Now, of course, everything's online. Teams have sites. And then the secondary market is like a commodities market. So you can instantly purchase a ticket here or there. And we've also kind of, stealthily used our media access from time to time. And, you write to a media relations guy and they, the minor league teams are great at that. You could be, have a tag saying Sheriff Dodge City and they'll wave you an entrance. NFL, not so much. But the Seattle Kraken, with our Sabre season credentials, they gave us passes. So that saved a little money.
Do you care where you sit?
No, actually, this whole press box thing is bad, actually. So like with the Kraken, for example, because, and I mean, you work in media, Rich, so you've been in press boxes all over. And you're pretty much cocooned from the fan experience if you don't venture out.
That's right.
You'll go to a dedicated entrance, up a dedicated elevator, and then you're there and they've got the hot dogs and the soda in the back of the seating area. for the press. You have to walk through concourses and see and kind of check out the food items, check out design elements. Seattle had great ones. They have a concourse that has that literally is all a garden. It's plantings on the wall and on the ceilings. The whole building is sustainable. They create the ice sheet for the ice that the team plays on with rain barrels and rainwater collection.
Wow.
I mean, what the building, they still serve in plastic cups. They're trying to figure out concessions, but they want to be totally carbon neutral by 2024. I mean, how remarkable is that to save the planet?
Yeah.
So that makes that building, they say climate pledge arena and they mean it. But yeah, but where we sit is of no consequence. Usually it's try to get the cheapest seat in the building. Las Vegas Raiders, we paid an obscene amount of money because it's an expensive ticket there, $200 and some to sit 3 rows from the top of the building.
Right.
But hey, we're in the building.
Yep.
And that's what counts.
Really tough questions to follow here. Best fans you experienced. I'll start there, then I got a follow up to that. Again, probably impossible to answer, but maybe not.
Best fans from what aspect? I mean, in terms of they buy the tickets and spend the most, or
no, just in terms of you mentioned some of the, Dortmund and the soccer fans, like in a particular venue, the fans can make the experience, right? I mean, forget about the seat, forget about the food, forget about all the amenities that you've mentioned. The fans themselves, the ones you personally interact with, or just the general excitement of the fan base in that venue. What venue fan base do you think was the best that you can recall, if you can?
Okay, well, I'll keep it to North America and Artvoice sports, because Europe is a whole different, animal.
Yeah.
I will talk about 2 NFL experiences that were memorable from that aspect. One was the Oakland Raiders. They have mimicked it in Las Vegas somewhat, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But Oakland, I mean, you see all these people in these black costumes and the skeletons and the chains and everything. It's not some outlier when you get that, 10-second glimpse on a television broadcast. These people are everywhere, and they're very intimidating, and they're loud, and really kind of fun to experience. It is a dirty shame that Oakland lost their football team. It's a lesson in the DNA and our fear in us that it could happen in Buffalo, and It's very true. It could happen in Buffalo. And if there's a fan base that did not deserve to lose a team, Oakland was it. So that, and they just add a lot to the fan energy and the fan experience and the intimidating. They were playing the New York Jets that night that we were there on a Sunday night football, and we were just wearing generic Bill swag. I had a polo shirt. We weren't even wearing the colors of the opposing team, but we heard it. We heard it. Like state your business here. Why are you here?
Right.
But it wasn't in a nasty way, not intimidating. The second great fan experience is the Green Bay Packers. And unfortunately, we had this website, thesportsroadtrip.com, and it became unsupportable with our platform. So we would have had to do like hundreds of hours of work to put it on a new, so we just deleted it. But we actually did a ranking of all the teams in the 4 sports on all these elements. And the Green Bay Packers far and away became the best NFL stadium to visit. And I highly recommend it to the sports traveler. To begin with, Green Bay is the size of Cheektowaga. I'm sorry, Cheektowaga lost population, about 108,000 people. The tallest building is a hospital building, which is 8 stories. It is very intimate. The airport there has 8 gates. And here in the middle of it is Titletown. And this monolith of a stadium, which has been remodeled and upgraded in an amazing way to make it a year-round facility. And it would be great if Buffalo did it was there. And I could talk about that if you'd like. What should Buffalo have in its stadium? But the entire state of Wisconsin turns out on game day. Every front lawn is a parking lot and a community gathering experience. Where I talked about Oakland people being kind of intimidating and scary. If you're walking around and you look like you're from a foreign country or foreign team, people will welcome you. We ate and drank like fiends and didn't spend a dime because it was just strangers welcoming us to their tailgates as we passed by. And we're not talking about a large parking lot. They have that as well. We're talking about neighborhoods, and they are very loud. They sense their tradition and their place in history, being a community-owned team and going back 100 years. And it's electric there. It is fantastic. And we were there twice, pre-renovation and post-renovation. Well, it counted as one venue experience, as one building. But we definitely go back if we had the opportunity.
It sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
Well, in terms of, yeah, Buffalo has its fan base, and these new stadiums are so incredibly beautiful and so corporate and have all the wow factors about them that, so maybe you think that it's going to dilute the passion, because now it's all about, you know, sipping wine in the club seats and, you know, eating bacon wrapped shrimp and wearing your pressed Dockers and everything. But in a lot of cases, not the case. The Minnesota Vikings new stadium downtown, you still have that whole Vikings energy and the Skull Vikings thing, which is really kind of cool. And Buffalo has a tremendous fan base, and this whole Bills Mafia thing. And I'm not, you know, I guess I'm too old for this, you know, getting silly drunk and cracking tables and everything. You know, I like being where I'm not getting rained and snowed on. And I know, and I did my dues. The Chuck Knox era, I sat through every bit of mud and rain, and, you know, and the talking crowd thing. So I paid my dues over there in Orchard Park. But has amazing fans, and I mean, it's fueling a lot about the discussion now about how much public subsidy should go into a new building, because I mean, the team is just so much part of our cultural DNA, and you don't see that in other cities as much as you do in Buffalo.
Yeah. It is interesting that the commonality, though, between Green Bay and Buffalo, and then I'll move on. But, you know, the stadium is plopped down in Orchard Park, and there are neighborhoods around, and there are people that park in backyards of houses. And if you're walking to or from any of those houses or yards, you're pretty much welcome, provided, even if you're not wearing Bills gear, even if you're the opponent. The Bills fans are generally very, very welcoming. Like you say, the Green Bay Packers are. Okay, so let's move on to food. Have you ranked food? Do you care about the food? Do you try all the, I mean, we can be kind of snobby in Buffalo. We love our food. We're good at it, right? So when it comes to stadium food, anyone that really knocks you out in your travels that you're like, wow, like this is remarkable. And not only is it great, but it's also affordable.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about affordables, and it just popped in the head, but food is very important. And it's actually the first thing, at least I look at, but we look at, and it's not walking into a stadium and saying, oh, let's grab a dog and a beer. We actually search, and we always do, the first thing is, let's find the signature food item that is unique to this area. What do they like and what do they eat? And we ask the locals, if I have to try something on the menu, what do we go to eat? And certainly you find that sort of thing, you know, at stadiums all over, just like we roll out our beef on weck. And I'd like to say wings, but, you know, we had buffalo chicken wings in Kyiv before going to our soccer match there. We actually found them and tried them. Side story, by the time we were done, I wanted to go in the kitchen to show them how they were really made. But you know, they tried, okay? There are little bits of celery and everything. They tried. But getting back to the stadiums, yeah, there are, you know, I mean, you go to, let's pick one at random. Philadelphia. I mean, you got the cheesesteak.
Sure.
So you go to a Phillies game or to Lincoln Field for the Eagles, and you're gonna immediately get to Gino and Joe's and try their signature item. Pittsburgh is famous for the Primanti sandwich. Pete, we went to the sub-regional in Buffalo, he and I, so we caught 6 games here. Well, I'm married now and I have a stepdaughter, so my life is taking a little bit different turn. I never expected this stage of my life, but here I am. So I you know, just so you talk about your wife and everything, you know, you have to, you know, family things, it gets a little tougher to just hop in a car and go to see 20 games with your buddy. But anyway, Pete went to Pittsburgh for the sub-regional. So he was 4 games Buffalo, 4 games Pittsburgh, and then 2 and 2. So he had a busy weekend. You go to Pittsburgh and their signature item is the Primanti Brothers sandwich. If you're not familiar with that, it's you know, it's meat, French fries, coleslaw, served on sourdough bread. You can add some mayo or some oil if you like to taste, and it's their thing. I mean, French fries on a sandwich. And so that's the kind of thing we look for, and we judge and we grade. One of our famous stories, this is a minor league ring now, the Gatineau Olympiques, where Martin Baran cut his teeth there as a junior. That's right across the river from Ottawa. And we caught a junior league game. They've since replaced their venue. I'd love to get back there. But we're in this, you know, 3,000 seat barn with, you know, the smell of stale beer and old black and white photos of all their teams going back 80 years. And we're sitting in the stands, and these people have these cartons, and they're stabbing a fork into it, and this strand of cheese is coming out. So I asked, and everybody speaks French there. You know, once you cross over from Ontario to Quebec, everything changes. And I said, you know, excusez-moi, and, you know, what is that? They said, c'est la poutine. I said, what? Poutine. What is poutine? This is 2008. So we went to the concession stand and ponied up and said, let's have poutine, please. 2 poutines. Best item ever. Poutine. Now you get poutine at every restaurant in Buffalo. It kind of moved its way westward from Quebec. But, things you discover. And we could say we're poutine snobs from 15 years ago. And we can tell you, and like you can screw up a chicken wing, you can screw up poutine as well. Trust me. So the real stuff, it's the crunch of the chips, of the fries, it's
the cheese curds, the gravy,
cheese, everything. Yeah. It's got to be assembled and put together right.
Heck
so food is important. Affordability. I'll throw this out. The Atlanta Falcons offer a bottomless bottle of a soda container for, I believe, $2, and they have hot dogs and I think peanuts and popcorn at $2. And then, of course, they have their $15 signature sandwiches, and beer is, big prices like everywhere. But if you're a bargain hunter, man, you just go and you get the bottom, the souvenir cup.
Sure.
Then you just go to the fountain and you just refill it yourself. What a bargain in this day and age, eh?
No kidding. No kidding. So going forward, tell me the place that I would be surprised that you haven't been. So you've been to all the major sports ones, but how about a college? Like, have you been to the Coliseum? Have you been to the Rose Bowl? Just for instance, have you been to Cameron Indoor to see a Duke game? Like, what are some of the places that I might think you've been, but you haven't, and they're maybe on your bucket list?
Yeah, we interestingly, a lot of college football. We've not touched the SEC too much. So I mean, Auburn, Alabama. There are some really big signature programs down there. And Cameron Indoor, yeah. And you know what? There's a spot where you don't go on StubHub. They have, with Coach K leaving now, that might I'll bet you they'll get a new arena, because he insisted, let's keep it intimate. Let's do it this way. I mean, and just think about the man hours loss of people camping out in tents for like weeks for tickets.
Yeah.
And they do not have secondary market tickets. So you pretty much have to know somebody to get a ticket in there. And interestingly enough, one of the interns for the Buffalo Sabres went to work at Duke University. We kept in touch, Leaf Skodnick. And Leaf said, if, I can try to see if I can get you tickets, I'm going down there. But I lost touch with them. And it's fascinating you brought that one up, because that would be a tremendous place to go. And just haven't been there. Some of the other places you did mention, going to a NASCAR event. And culturally, it's not a big thing. I don't really watch a lot of it or pay attention. But again, it's truly a unique American experience.
Yep.
So just to go, and right away you have to think Daytona. That would be the one, because that's the marker for NASCAR. So maybe it'll happen at some point.
Again, I want to go back just in my travels. I went to spring break when I was in college in Daytona, and so I had to drive by the racetrack to get to my hotel and eventually the beach. And man, that place is insanely massive. And same for, I don't know if you've been to the Indy 500, but you see Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and I drove around the outside of that when I was in Indianapolis a couple of times. Again, enormous facilities that you wouldn't think, by looking at them and watching the races, you're like, okay, whatever, it's a stadium, it is what it is. And then you see it in person, you're like, oh my God, it puts most of what any of us have ever been to, on a completely different level. I will say this, LSU, I've been to a football game in Baton Rouge. Go there. I went to an LSU Alabama game. Okay, so but
Tigers were great.
Yeah, that's a great spot. But yeah, I love talking about this kind of thing, because to your point, I've been to, only a third of what you've done, but whatever. And if you throw in the college stuff, I've been to maybe 50 total. But needless to say, it is so much fun to get to those legendary venues and see a sporting event in it, regardless of your own fandom. If you're a sports fan, man, it's so freaking cool. And oh, by the way, I see an endorsement for you someplace. Why is Travelocity or Kayak or StubHub or somebody not knocking on your door and saying, holy cow, this guy's been here, document, or maybe you do a documentary on your story and you show everybody where you've been. I think this is something that everybody would watch and take in, especially sports fans, because this is really remarkable. Or write a book, for God's sake.
Rich, it's a good point. I think only because we haven't sold it. You have to devote time to putting a platform, and then you have to go out there and kind of like market yourself and say, we could do this. One of my seatmates at the Sabres games in the press box says, you could get a Netflix show and have a crew follow you around. And, you see the garbage that they're trying to make content, and that would be like so cool, and nobody else has done it.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, where do I start? And it's, you find a producer, you find an agent.
Right.
And as I said, we've been at this for so long now, and we are, and as I mentioned, my personal life takes a different focus when you're, reading bedtime stories to a 9-year-old. And so we just aren't doing this as much as we used to. But, you never know. Some opportunities fall into lap sometimes at the least expected times. Brady
came back.
Yeah. We'll never be rid of him. You realize that.
Right.
When he's finally done and is, and he had that horrific injury that's going to, hobble him, he'll probably be the head coach of the Miami Dolphins or something.
Oh.
It'll be like the Shula era again.
No, God forbid. Okay, one more time, Andrew. The church on Como where people can go and donate items or cash to help other folks in Ukraine.
Yeah, Holy Trinity Ukrainian Orthodox Church.
Okay.
We have 5 Ukrainian parishes in Buffalo, 4 Catholic, 1 Orthodox. We all get along. They're great people, and they're there every day. And they also have their kitchen open. If you like, the Polish kielbasa and holubci, the golubkis, they call them in Polish. These are all the same people. It's amazing they burnt each other's villages 100 years ago. They're all the same people. And then, of course, Dnipro, DNIPRO Ukrainian Club on Genesee. And if you go to their Facebook page, they have all kinds of links to how to help and support.
Awesome. Hey, I've taken way too much of your time. You've been awfully generous to be able to talk about this. And the crazy thing is, in the almost an hour we've talked, we haven't even really gotten super specific about anything. But I just wanted to tell your story, and of course, tell the backstory of you and how you're associated with Ukraine and what they're going through, and kind of tackle both at once. And I'm glad we did. And I definitely want to check back with you, sometime in the next couple of months, and maybe expand on your sports travels. And hopefully at that point as well, this whole Ukrainian conflict will be over. We can get the folks back into their home country. We can start the rebuild, etc. But let's do that. In the meantime, enjoy your vacation in North Carolina. And thanks for being in the basement with me, Andrew. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Rich, it's been great. And hopefully we'll be, one of the next stops on the USRT tour will be Buffalo's new stadium.
Yeah.
I have some strong opinions on what should be happening there, but that might be a conversation for future discussion. Thank you.
For sure. We'll talk soon. Enjoy.
Alrighty. Have a good day.